Josh Monday here, and you've just seen me play part of the solo Eruption, one of the world's greatest guitar solos of all time, released in 1978, recorded in 1977 by a very young Eddie Van Halen for their debut album. This blistered onto the scene as a flurry of tapping and all sorts of new guitar pyrotechnics that really hadn't been heard up to that point. I've done quite a few of these tone design segments, and I often get feedback from people online that says we can only really get that tone with exactly the right gear and exactly the right amplifier. The issue with that, yes, you can get some of that tone, but what you're not going to reproduce is what was recorded in the studio, what was done to that signal after it was recorded, the microphone placement that was put on that amplifier within the studio, any room mics that were there, any EQing that was done afterwards, any effects that were out afterwards, and even the mixing and mastering process changes the tone potentially quite considerably. So what we can do with the GT1 multi-effects is replicate not just the amplifier and the effects, but also things that were done post-production. So any of the mixing techniques or the room or the microphones. Let's break this down into the four elements of tone, I like to call them, which are the guitar, the pickup and any pickup selection that's on that guitar, the amplifier, then any effects that are done afterwards. And like I said, that's not just effects that you would plug into the amplifier, but also any effects that are done post-production, after it's recorded, or even the microphones on the amplifiers and the room ambience and a whole bunch of different things that we can simulate. So let's go through those things step by step. Firstly, the guitar. Eddie would have used his Frankenstrat, which was a Strat, similar somewhat to this, but it had a humbucker that he gouged out and put in the bridge for himself. We don't have that, but on board in the GT1, we do have a tone modifier that will allow us to go from single coil to humbucker, so we'll start with that. Secondly, of course, it was the bridge pickup. It was the only pickup in the guitar that functioned. His amplifier is his very famous Marshall Plexi, his 1968 Marshall Plexi, which he legendarily has cranked to 11, all the knobs, everything up. And then also his Phase 90, so a nice phaser pedal over the top, and Echoplex for delay. So we'll try and recreate all of those elements and see what else, like the space and the plate, big reverb that's on that, and we'll recreate that in the GT1. Now this song is in E flat. He tuned to E flat. I'm not tuned to E flat simply because I'm playing this within a medley of a whole bunch of other songs when I play this particular tone. So I've chosen to play this in normal concert tuning and just re-finger it to a different position. So that being the case, my first chord is an A flat. Played like that. So let's have a listen firstly at tone modifying. So we're going from our single coil sound, and I'm going to turn the first thing on in the effects section here. I'm going to press edit and turn on this first part here. Press enter to go into the parameters, and you'll see this is guitar simulation, single coil to humbucker, and I've just boosted the top end a little bit because it's a sharper sort of humbucker type tone. So off, very single coil, on. It's a thicker sort of tone, so that's a good starting point. So next was his amplifier, his Marshall Plexi Super Lead, legendarily cranked. So let's firstly go to the preamp section here, where we have a Marshall, 1959. I've turned the gain quite a fair way up there, and if we press enter and go over the page, we'll see that we've got bass, middle and treble. Now I've left the bottom end about right, the bass about midway, but both the middle and treble I've cranked all the way because it's quite a sharp sound, and often on those old Plexis, when you crank the presence control, it offers a whole new level of gain. So that's quite important that we try and replicate that. So let's have a listen to how that amp sounds. So that's got a lot of fuzz to it. It's quite toppy, just in the way those Marshall Plexis tend to break up in that top end. So that's great, but really we don't have those characteristics, the phaser and the big plate reverb that really offers that space in there. So let's add those as well. Firstly, the phaser. So if we go to the modulation section here, I turn that on, and I've got a 4-stage phaser selected, rates at about 30 and depths at about 40. So let's just see how close that is. That's getting closer, but it's really missing that really big spatial plate reverb that's on there as well. So let's add some reverb. Click the reverb twice to turn it on. I've got plate selected. 2.5 seconds is the time, so that's quite a long reverb in quite a large room. Effect level, I've turned that up almost all the way because it's a really, really big effect. So let's have a listen to that. We're nearly there, I think. All right, so that's getting pretty close now. We're starting to hear all of the nuances that go along with that sound. What we are missing, of course, is the world famous whammy bar, which, you know, Fender Strats don't tend to like too much. They don't do the dive quite as far down as we might like. In any case, for tuning stability, I've chosen not to use the whammy bar on the guitar, but I have assigned a dive bomb pitch shift to the expression pedal on the GT1, which I've assigned to an octave down. So we can get that familiar sound, but with our foot. So let's have a listen to the dive bomb. And finally, just some of the tapping triplets that he's so famous for within this piece. So there we have it. That's how we can recreate the sound of Eruption on the Boss GT1. If you're interested in this patch and getting any other tips and tricks on tone creation and a whole bunch of other patches for Boss and rolling gear, please go to my website, guitareffectspatches.com.